Today I gotta explain useContext in React. UseContext is a React hook. It allows you to share values between multiple levels of components without passing props through each level. What we'll do in this example is create 4 components, components A through D. Each component will be nested within one another. So within our source folder, let's create a new file for component A. This will be a JSX file. We will create a function-based component named component A. No parameters for now, and be sure to export it. Export default component A. Within this component, we will return some HTML. We will return a div element. The div element will have a class name of box. Within this div element, we will create an h1 element that has text of component A. Within our app component, we will import component A. Import component A of 25 pixels. And D. From component A, we're going to import component B. Import component B from its location. Component B.jsx. After our h1 element, we will include one component B component. We have component B within component A. Now within component B, we will import component C. Import component C from its location. Component C.jsx. After our h1 element, we will include one component C component. So we have component C within component B within. Now after our h1 element, I will create an h2 heading. We will embed some JavaScript. We'll display a template string of hello. We're drilling down to the center component. Passing props down this long chain can become very tedious, but there's a better solution, and that is with the useContext hook. The useContext hook allows us to. However, we have to set up a provider component. Which component has the data we would like access to? In this case, it would be component A. In component A, we have that state variable of our username, which we named user. So within our provider component, we have 3 steps. We have to import create context from React. So within component A, we already have useState, but we also need create context. We need to create some context and export it. Export const. Then we need a unique name for this context. We're working with the username. Let's name our context useReducer. The context name should be descriptive of what you're working with. If the data we're working with is a color, we could say color context equals create context, and this is a function. Now the last thing we need to do is wrap any children components within this special provider component. We are going to wrap component B within another component. We will take our useContext, access provider, set the value equal to be some JavaScript, our value of user. And we just need to wrap this component of component B. Component A is now the provider component. It's going to provide a value of user. We no longer need props. We can get rid of these for each component. A is now the provider component. It's going to provide a value of user. We no longer need props. We can get rid of these for each component. After I deleted props from component B, well, our username is now undefined within component D. We broke that chain. Alright. Any component that needs this data, we will set up to be a consumer component. You can have more than one. We'll have to import the useContext hook from React, as well as the context that we set up. We're exporting it, so we need to import it elsewhere. Within component D, we will import from React, useObject destructuring, the useContext hook from its location of React. We also need the user context. Import useObject destructuring to get user context from its location of component A. That was the original location where we exported it from. We'll use the context, get the context, and store the value. We'll do that inside of our component. Const user equals useContext hook. We're going to pass in our user context as an argument. And now we have access to user. We'll use a placeholder and add our user. And that has appeared to work. We have displayed by your username. We have avoided prop drilling. Instead of drilling down to the center component to pass down a value, by using useContext, we traverse up the component tree to find the nearest provider, which would be component A. In A, I would have to pass props down all the way to component D. I'll have to pass them to B, which will pass them to C, which will pass them to D. So if we were using props, this is what we would have to do. Within component B, we will pass in props, set user. In component C, we will set user to equal, embed some JavaScript, props.user. Within component C, we'll set up props again. Within component D, we will set user to equal, embed some JavaScript, props.user. Then within component D, set up props again. After our h1 element, let's create an h2 element. We'll embed some JavaScript, use a template string, display by, add a placeholder, access props, our parameter, access the user. Within component, some JavaScript. Within props will be the parameter. Within component C, we will set user to equal, embed some JavaScript, props.user. Within component C, we'll set up props again. Within component D, we will set user to equal, embed some JavaScript, props.user. Then within component